Welcome back to London Calling, the latest lowdown for every Broadway buff about what's happening on the other side of the pond. Later, we'll catch up with Paul Hilton, who is currently starring in the extraordinary epic The Inheritance on Broadway. But first, let's take a quick look at which shows the Brits are getting into one of their infamous queues for. There's Life After Romeo, new musical and Juliet, which asks, what if Shakespeare's Juliet's famous ending was really just her beginning, is heating things up this winter at the West End's Shaftesbury Theatre. Featuring the songs of Max Martin, who has written for artists you might have heard of like Britney Spears, Celine Dion, Backstreet Boys, Pink, Katy Perry and Ariana Grande, numbers include classics such as Baby One More Time and Everybody, Backstreet's Back. Directed by Luke Shepherd and starring Miriam Teak-Lee in the title role, Broadway insiders are keeping an eye on this one, as they are on the world premiere of Leopoldstadt. Helmed by Patrick Marber, Tom Stoppard's latest is described as his most humane and heartbreaking play. Meanwhile, over at the Playhouse Theatre, James McAvoy is headlining Cyrano de Bergerac, an inventive new adaptation of Edmond Rostand's masterwork by Martin Crimp, with direction by Jamie Lloyd. At the Other Palace, a reworked Amelie the Musical has garnered solid reviews. The West End is also currently playing host to Sarah Bareilles and Gavin Creel in Waitress, and Dear Evan Hansen, which has recently begun waving through a window to much acclaim across the pond. Thumbs up to Samantha Barks, who'll be letting it go in Frozen when it makes its West End premiere. The star of Broadway's Pretty Woman and the Les Mis movie will take on the role of Elsa when Disney's hit reopens the newly restored Theatre Royal Drury Lane in October 2020. The cold never bothered her anyway. Thumbs down to Samantha Barks for being unable to be in two places at once. Pretty Woman will open at the Piccadilly Theatre this year without her. However, never fear, the fabulous Amy Atkinson, an original cast member of Six, has been tapped as Vivian, with Danny Mac appearing as Edward. This trip to Rodeo Drive is in safe hands. The royal family has been in the news lately, so we thought we'd take a look at one of the gigs Harry and Meghan have, by the looks of things, decided isn't for them. Every year, a couple of senior members of the royal family get glammed up and head to the West End for the Royal Variety Performance. It's a televised annual variety show that raises money for charity. The first performance was back in 1912, when it was known as the Royal Command Performance, and had King George V and Queen Mary in attendance. Famous performers over the decades have included everyone from the Beatles to the Supremes to Broadway.com regular Elaine Page, so the event has led to some of the most eclectic photos ever taken with the royals. This year, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge chatted with the cast of Mary Poppins, who must have impressed them. Kate later took Prince George and Princess Charlotte to the classic musical as a holiday treat. And now it was fascinating to sit down with Paul Hilton, who originated the roles of Morgan and Walter in The Inheritance in London. Re-envisioning E.M. Forster's masterpiece Howard's End to 21st century New York, the show has critics buzzing and audiences laughing and sobbing in equal measure. Paul, thank you so much for doing this. Set the scene for us, for those people who, at home, they've heard of The Inheritance, they know it's an epic, but it's based around Howard's End, isn't it, which is from 1910.
Yeah, people are going to be in for a surprise. You don't have to know Howard's End, I think, or any of, you just arrive and there's these young men on stage and they're all trying to tell a story, and our principal character refers to Howard's End because E.M. Forster was a great hero of his and is trying to find a way into beginning to tell his story, and then Morgan appears and I play E.M. Forster, and an audience is kind of trying to marry these two worlds together, and then we realise that we're telling a kind of template of Howard's End through the perspective of a young gay man in New York in the 21st century.
So the show is commissioned by Hartford Stage here in the US, but it basically began in London.
Yes.
However, it's a quintessential New York tale on so many levels.
Very much so. For
you on first preview, how was it playing Broadway? I mean, that must have been one of the most emotional experiences of your whole career.
Yes, yes it was. And I think because we'd played it in London, because I know the power of this piece, I've been inside it and drove it for so long, I was so excited about playing it in front of a New York audience, and just to see what that would bring. That character is suddenly in the story. Here we are. So there's this enormous kind of release for me. It was like we finally, this is where this story is meant to be told.
Because you played two characters on the stage, to be clear. So you've got Morgan, who's the Forster character.
Who's the Forster character. And then
Walter.
He has an opportunity to step into a contemporary character, a man of a certain age, living in New York now. And that's liberating for Morgan, if you like. It allows him to explore facets of himself that wasn't allowed to in his lifetime. So
a lot of people talk, and you mentioned about this, the monologue that Walter has. We don't want to spoil things, but does bring up the AIDS crisis and so forth.
Yes.
There's sobbing in the audience.
Yeah.
How do you cope with that?
I hear it, I listen to it, I feel it, and I try to pay due reverence to that, because, you know, for me, I think I said very early on in the early preview stages when we did this at the Young Vic, I've done a lot of theatre. This is the closest I've ever felt to kind of church, you know, theatre and a communion, if you like, of souls, a congregation. And in that moment where we're evoking, conjuring the spirits of all those beautiful people that we lost in the AIDS crisis, you know, it's the closest we ever get to a kind of memorial or church. You know, there is a sense of people palpably connecting with the spirits of the people that they loved and lost. And you have to acknowledge that. You can't, you know, skirt over that. That's the center of the play, that kind of love and connection with our past and those that we left behind.
What's fascinating watching it on Broadway is that Stephen Daldry has created what I would call a safe space. You must very much feel that as actors.
Oh yes, and that's one of Stephen's great gifts. He's an eternal child. He's really in touch with his inner child, and so that allows a great freedom in the rehearsal room.
Now this show is your Broadway debut, and what a show to be making it with.
Indeed.
I mean, on some levels, a dream come true.
Totally, yeah.
How are you finding the Broadway community? Because I think as Brits, before I moved here, I always heard about the Broadway community and I thought, really? Does that really exist? Is that really a thing?
Yeah.
But it is, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I mean, for me as well, I tended to, when we played London, but generally when we play in theatres, I tend to go out the front of house. I don't like to do stage door encounters. I think when I was a young person going to the theatre as a teenager, if I saw an actor in the bar after a show, something was lost. You know, there was a magic that disappeared, or I suddenly saw them out of character. So in my imagination, I always try to preserve that sense of a character. But in the Broadway community, you have to meet the stage door. You have to meet those people. You know, I've never done that before. So to get something back off an audience in that way on a nightly basis is food. That's the thing that's getting me through these lonely days. You know, it's just those audiences are so generous. And also other ensembles. You know, we had that first night, we had this thing where all the companies had put their messages out to us on the wall, you know, and every single actor on Broadway had signed a good luck wish. That was extraordinary. I've never seen that in the West End. And so those kinds of things are just beautiful.
And a long way from really where you were born. You're born in the north of England.
Yeah.
How did you get into acting? Because West End's a long way from where you were born.
Well, brilliant teacher, brilliant drama teacher, brilliant school drama, but particularly one individual, Colin Snell, who's nurtured so many young people. Matthew Dunster, who's about to open Hangmen, he's a Colin Snell protege. A lot of people went through here, and he just selflessly took us to the theatre. You know, his passion for theatre was so infectious, and that, you know, age 13, I was hooked. I didn't want to do anything else. So I made inroads. I wrote to the BBC, all the television, you know, how do I get into this? Constantly pushed away. No, you have to go the professional, you have to go to drama school, you have to, you know, for a young, poor lad from Oldham, that was very difficult. So I just kept doing and doing and doing, and I found my own way, you know. But it's so difficult for young people, I think, if they don't have that access. And it's crucial to mental health, to development, to empathy, all of those things, you know.
And you must get that with kids coming to see the show.
Yeah, that's the most moving thing, you know. It's, my daughter is 16 years old. She was so opened by this piece, you know, in a way that I couldn't even begin to teach her about, you know, life and the complexities of relationships. She just needed to watch this piece, and her understanding of love and the nature of love, you know, I think she'll be armed for life, you know, by having sat through this. So for me, that's the value of theatre. It's transformative. People leave that auditorium and they are transformed. There's no question about it. They've experienced something that's taken them out of themselves. You know.
I think there's no better way to end that. Thank you so much, Paul, for coming in.
Great
Well.
pleasure.
Thank you.
Lovely to meet you.
See you next time. Cheerio.